It's marvelous to me. Oh, and the recording's in progress, just as I welcome everyone. So thanks for joining us live. As Ruby said, we've received your questions. Many of you did take the option to submit a question, and we already have a ton of questions. So we are going to honor that. We want to focus on what you most want to hear about. So we're going to dive straight into it. Bear with us. We haven't run a session like this before where it's straight into questions. And I know we have loads. Yeah, it's going to be playing by ear, but Sarah and Robin and Jack are looking forward, just as I am, to getting into discussing the answers to your questions. And so rather than any kind of framing language, I will jump to the very first question, which helps actually to set the tone, which is to actually clarify, what does open scholarship mean in relation to open access? Is it the same thing? Is it different? What exactly are we talking about here? So open access, when we talk about open access, we're speaking of content, scholarly published content that is free to read online and to reuse, free to read and reuse. When it comes to open scholarship or open research or open science, all of these terms could be used. It's about much more than just the published text being openly available and reusable. It's in addition to that open access component, it is also the underlying data for the article, the code, those things underneath, underpinning the article, sometimes supplementary content. But all of that stuff also being open and quite often adhering to what's called FAIR principles. So where the data are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So in this setting, especially if we are talking about open access, if the speakers talk about open access, then they mean free to read online and free to reuse. And if we refer to open research or open science or open scholarship, then that's a much bigger concept going far beyond just the written text of the article, right? Now, the other sort of question that we had that helps to frame this whole session is, what models are you covering when you're talking about library evaluations of charge-free open access? What models are you covering? Now, for a long time, open access has been seen by many, by all, not always, but by many, and for a long time, open access has been seen as synonymous with the payment of an individual article publishing charge that's most often facing the researcher, the scholar, the author. What we're discussing here is libraries' role in supporting open access content that is charge-free for those researchers, right? That means it's free to read the content and reuse, as I described the definition of open access, but it's also free individually for that author or that scholar to publish open access. And free to read, free to publish does sound like the land of unicorns and rainbows to some people. And, quality content and properly vetted, curated and contextualized content, it costs. So we're talking about models like either collective action, like subscribe to open, or membership or partnership models, or models where the content is opened up via funding from another source. So a government, an institution, and another organization, a learned society. Very often, this can be called diamond open access, which is at its essence about this sort of free to read and reuse content and free to publish open access. And some people do see collective action as a way to enable diamond open access, and others think that these are separate, but that they do share a lot of the same principles. So we're not going to get into a debate about what falls into what bracket, but these are the sorts of models that we're talking about and library evaluations about them. So I'll get straight now into discussion with the panel continuing to answer your questions. And we wanted to tackle the big one first, why, right? So Robin, if I could turn to you first, what is driving a library's decision to support either a collective action solution, membership, partnership, subscribe to open, or diamond type of offering? Why would you do it?
The glib answer is why not? But the actual answer is that libraries are finding that open access and open scholarship just aligns with higher ed mission, and that's what we're all about. So we want to support that ability to more freely share and reuse the information that sometimes is publicly funded and often is not. Libraries also have a history of collective action. Academic libraries, interlibrary loan, shared print retention programs, consortia that are library organized for, buying materials more easily, discount programs, interlibrary loan agreements. So, there's a long history. Libraries have to work together to make the whole system work because no library can own everything. So at its bottom, we just have to do this. There's also, after the whole rush to read and publish or transformative agreement, APC driven open access, which many of us jumped into with both feet because it was the only game in town at first. We're starting to understand there are some issues about equity. There's issues about the article driven economy that may not be beneficial to libraries being able to support a good research environment. But at its base, we want to make sure that the research that's getting supported and out there in the world is, as you described, Malavika, it is highly edited, highly peer reviewed. It is, it passes all the quality tests. We want to support also, every library wants to support those pockets of research that align with what they're teaching and what they're researching. So there's also that as a distinction for choices made.
Great. Thank you, Robin. And as you mentioned, transformative agreements, transitional agreements, read and publish agreements, it's probably worth saying that these do remove author side fees for those authors who are affiliated with a library that is paying a publisher, right? So that is the difference there. And we have received some questions about these as well. So as you just touched on there, Robin, we'll probably be covering those that model, if you like, as well in the round and as part of the discussion. But Jack, can I come to you next, because quite fundamentally, is supporting this sort of free open access for the authors, is it even sustainable for libraries?
Well, I would approach the question from another angle, that is any model for content for libraries sustainable? We all know about the kind of issues with the read-only big deals, with read and publish deals based on legacy subscription spend going back to the 90s, issues with publish and read deals, which might be based on a combination of inflating APC prices and also inflating article growth. There are kind of real problems with the sustainability of those. So I wouldn't kind of equally, I would acknowledge that with author charge-free open access, it's difficult to get a foot in the door and difficult to establish and sustain and grow. But I think it's healthy. It's got a kind of got a foot in the door. Kind of, people are committed to it by reason of alignment with institutions, consortias, and libraries' principles and mission statements. For example, looking at IReL consortium, my employer's mission statement now, a sentence from that is that we want to partner locally and globally in developing an open, transparent, and trusted and diverse scholarly communications ecosystem. So the type of open access we're talking about right now would tick a lot of boxes there.
Sure. Thank you. Now, we have had a load of questions about, give us some links to documents or matrices for how libraries evaluate new open access publishing agreements and approach the renewal of those agreements, especially in the charge-free context, but just in general as well. What we are going to do is to continually through the session, we will have links shared as speakers start to address this how question, right? So we're into this territory now where we're talking about how do libraries actually evaluate? We've talked about the why a little bit. So how is this evaluation done? And as part of that, Robin, I want to come to you first with, before we get into the real nitty gritty aspects of how, this top line question, right, which I wanted to preserve in here. What do librarians really think of publisher-led OA initiatives in general, but also inhabiting a library space? What do you think about these from university presses?
Well, I've had a little trouble with this question because, I mean, there's OA initiatives that funders are pushing, and then there's, in response, libraries and publishers are starting their own OA initiatives. Think about the open access initiatives that faculty at a university would create. You know, this was probably a decade or 15 years ago now. Publisher-led OA initiatives are fine. I'm all for them. I'm just kind of sad that every publisher has a slightly different one, so it's always a little hard to figure out exactly, you know, there a lot of time has to be spent. And I understand that a lot of publishers spend a lot of time creating these, and every publisher is unique, no matter how big or small or medium-sized they are. And so they have different revenue goals, different revenue streams, and they're trying to satisfy needs from authors and libraries and their stakeholders, their whatever society or university press. So I'm all for publisher OA initiatives. Sometimes at the end of the day, I go home and go, not another one. Please, not, couldn't they just like do what publisher W did? If you really want to know what librarians think. As far as university presses, most of the academic librarians here in the US that I know of, we really, really want to support our university presses because they're kind of by definition aligned with the higher ed mission of the universities we're embedded in as well. And we think that they do great work, and especially depending on the press, I often kind of lump most university presses in the humanities and social sciences, but they're not always, but we want to support them as much as we can. So I'm all for and excited when I see new open access university press initiatives.
Great. So thanks for talking through the difficulty of the complexity of sort of weighing up, especially when there's such a variety of offerings out there. And at this point, Sarah, I want to bring you in because this leads us very nicely on to answering the next question, which is, what then are your main priorities when you're assessing particularly fee-free open access models? You know, are you looking at usage? Is it authorship? Is it exclusive benefits for your institution? Is it something else? So what are all the factors in the mix? And do you rank these in any way? Do you have favorites? Do you prioritize?
So the approach at my library has really been to focus on not necessarily very detailed criteria, because I think when we started to think about how were we going to evaluate the new sorts of initiatives that were coming forward, you know, the community-led open access initiatives, for example, we very quickly realized we didn't want to have a very long tick box of things to apply, because then almost that then becomes we are spending so much time evaluating these. We would probably be scrutinizing them more than the evaluation that we'd done for paywalled resources, for example. So what we really felt was that we had already identified a need that we wanted to strategically support these sorts of initiatives, touching on the responses Robin and Jack have already given. You know, we need to see a much more diverse, much more sustainable system of scholarly publishing that involves a range of different models. So therefore, we wanted to find ways that we would be able to look at these new models that are emerging and think about, well, actually, do they meet our mission and do they meet our values, etc. So that's very much the approach we've taken. So we do have some criteria that we apply, but it's very much around, is this is the alignment strong with our teaching and our research at York? Is there alignment with the university's open research statement, for example? Is the initiative transparent? How is the governance working? Is that community-led governance something that we're very keen to see? Is it a non-profit or not? Can we get involved in that governance? So a range of questions like that, which are quite, they're not about usage necessarily. We've all about our authors already publishing with these publishers. Yes, that might be part of the alignment question, but we're trying to focus in on sort of higher level factors really. So we have developed our own criteria, and also what we have done is my library, we've worked together with other research libraries in the UK to come up with a kind of set of criteria that we think we wanted to share with the community as well. So that's on the Research Libraries UK website, if anyone wants to look at that, some shared principles for investing in open monographs.
Absolutely. And we'll see these popping up in chat as well, the principles that York has developed and the shared principles you've developed with other libraries. So we'll see that popping up in chat in a second. Lisa, hopefully you can help with that. But while we're chatting, Sarah, budgets obviously are really tight, reducing, shrinking, and at the same time there's perhaps a proliferation, if you like. It's not massive, it's still not dominant by any means, but there's still more offerings that are of this fee-free for authors, diamond OA or collective action models. So you've got these growing models or offerings under these kind of models. You've got shrinking budgets.
Yeah.
How are libraries managing this?
I can only really speak for my library. So what we're trying to do is trying to protect our spend on this area and grow it. And that is very much happening as our spend in other areas is shrinking. So we have a reduced budget. Our reductions have been applied to some areas of our budget and not others, by choice by us, I have to say. So we have made that choice that we will protect this area of our spend and try to grow it. The savings we've had to make have been so large that, anyway, cutting back on what we're spending in this area would not have helped to deliver our savings because, it's still very small. It's actually, when you look at percentage, it's pitifully small. So we really do want to grow our commitment, but we are prioritizing, I think it's probably fair to say, initiatives that are reasonably priced. Therefore, we aren't supporting many that come from the bigger, more established publishers, particularly those kind of commercial publishers. We are supporting much smaller university presses, scholar-led initiatives and things like that, and choosing that as a way to, I guess, to match the rich subject mix and diversity that goes on in the research and teaching here at York. So that's been our approach. So yes, we've cut back on things like read and publish deals for that very reason. We had to make savings. That was our biggest area of spend. But also, if we're not careful, that sucks up all our budgets. I mean, let's face it, right? If we didn't make these sort of principal choices, we would be spending nothing else on, but these massive agreements. So yeah, that's very much part of what we feel it's our responsibility as a library to kind of take forward.
So it's like a principle-driven choice, and I think we'll have, if not already, York's a link to your collections and principles around how you think about your collection. So that will be coming into chat as well. But if I could now deep dive specifically for a minute into the subscribe to open model, to the S2O model, and Jack, if I turn to you about this to ask really, how does this as a distinctive model fit into your overall library strategy, and how do you evaluate S2O offers? And when you're doing that, do you think about your support, lending your support to an S2O offer differently, whether or not the threshold that the publisher has asked for has been met?
Okay, well, a handful of questions in there. I'll try and remember them all. I suppose for background, my consortium, IReL, was an early supporter, subscribed to Open when annual reviews first trialed it a few years ago. And I remember having a call with them. They pitched the model and being very excited about it. So I kind of passed the pitch on to a negotiations group. And there was a kind of in the room at the time, there was a silence. And I wasn't sure whether that was them being cool about it or them not understanding it. But the silence was actually a sort of tacit support. Like for them, it was a no-brainer. It's a effectively a subscription agreement with good usage. Yeah, it made sense. It was a no-brainer to allow that to be flipped to open access to, I suppose, kind of meet or cost control objectives and also or principles for kind of allowing broader open access. And something we found out recently is that, we had annual reviews on the go, but we only realized recently we did we're writing an article for our blog on the growth of subscribe to open, and we didn't realize how many of our existing deals had subscribed to open journals in there already. So I thought it might be one or two, but it was actually maybe 6 or 8. So most recently we had a deal with De Gruyter Brill, and a large part of their portfolio is subscribed to open. The Royal Irish Academy on track to flip from largely read and publish to subscribe to open in the next year. And we've been very supportive of that. I suppose kind of what makes subscribe to open different is that for established publishers, it's a relatively easy path in for open access, where there's already the budget line for that publisher among libraries. And when it's ticking the extra box of open access and open research principles, really makes sense. And also, your other question about evaluation, we haven't really kind of evaluated these deals in a new way yet. We treat them largely still as subscription agreements. So if the usage is working, then the deal is sustained. We haven't done a deep dive into the authorship. I think in the case of annual reviews, Irish authorship for their articles is relatively low, so it wouldn't pass the threshold for a publish and read deal, but it does pass the threshold for subscribe to open. But while it's still, it's going strong, but it's still relatively small in the big scheme of things. So we think having that kind of evaluation framework built into it would be premature.
Great, thank you, and a good use case for usage actually coming into the mix there, especially for that model, at least in the case of IReL's own evaluation. Now, Robin, I'm going to turn to you next about asking you about exclusive access, right? So sometimes you've got these free models for open access that are offering older content and backlist access as an exclusive benefit to those libraries that support, because let's just, for the avoidance of any doubt, when libraries are supporting these models, it opens up the content to everyone, right? So we need to be very clear about that. So then you do have some models that say, okay, you support us, we open the content up for everyone, but because you are paying us some money exclusively, because of that payment, you will be able to see our back file or something else. How important is that, and how do you judge that?
It's always nice to have. And even 4 or 5 years ago, it was important to know that you were getting something. There was some actual, not that I can touch a digital file, but something tangible, that we got, instead of just being altruistic totally. And at least here, our collections team, our mind shift has kind of shifted. It's like, this is the content we want our users to have access to, so we're going to support it, whether we get anything exclusive or not. So over time, at least here at Iowa State, we don't need that quite as much to feel good about supporting something. It's more about supporting the work that the publisher is doing, and that's enough. But not everybody not every library has a budget that they can do that with. It means going back to what Sarah was saying, making those choices based on principles and saying, okay, that means we're going to be asking faculty to use IReL to get to paywalled content. But we want this other content that we deem of more value and more alignment with the university and the library's missions to be accessible.
Great. Now I am seeing, folks, I'm seeing the Q&A area and I'm seeing your questions, and they're great questions, and I'm going to have to balance and do some trade-offs, right? We're going to get to some and then not the others. So please bear with us because we don't have time to get to everything. But while we're talking about Subscribe to Open in particular, there's a question from Patricia about whether anyone has seen S2O agreements with articulated caps on profit margins or commitment to cost recovery model and things like that. Speakers, anyone who would like to jump in on your thoughts about this? Jack, please come in.
Yeah. Well, the point I make here is that there's, in my experience, there's generally no such thing as a subscribe to open agreement. It's a model adopted by the publisher, and the agreement itself, the contract between the library and the publisher, is generally silent on that and treats it as a standard subscription agreement.
Yeah, and that's an interesting take. And I don't know what publishers listening to this think about it, and maybe different. I don't know if Sarah and Robin, you also see S2O as a subscription deal, essentially. Robin, please.
Exactly what Jack said, and I'll just follow up with, that's where you get into some of these open access criteria that we should apply to everybody, not just the open, as Sarah was saying. We can't be more, ask more of an open publisher than we do of a commercial publisher. So if we want to know what they do with their revenue, what they do with their profit, what they do with, if they're a charitable society, what they do with their overage, we need to ask that of everybody else and then pay attention to it in our decision making. But again, it's nothing that's part of it. It's not in a part in the agreement. You're just subscribing to support the content with a subscribe to open.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Now I'm coming to row 25 in the sheet, because you'll know what that means. And Robin, this at least initially is a question that stays with you. How do you check that you are not duplicating your support across the various support schemes now available for fee-free open access? And while I put that question to you, I'll blend it with, in the Q&A, we've also had something to say, well, is it a library's job to show affiliation to models? Isn't a library just there to librarian functions? Aren't they just there to serve their patrons and their researchers? So I don't know if you want to comment on that as well. But yes, how do you make sure you're not duplicating support if fee-free models are offered through more than one mechanism?
Right. So as far as the duplication, it's a challenge because you've got groups like Knowledge Unlatched, SCOS, now we have the Open Journal Collective, the Open Book Collective, trying to support those publishers that don't have the ability themselves. They need to be part of a group in order to make their open, to do all the business office kind of work to support their open publishing. But basically our integrated library system, our ILS, tracks all that because it tracks all the way down to the title level. So usually before we support a package from an aggregator like Knowledge Unlatched or something, we'll run that through against our ILS so that we'll know how much overlap there is. Hopefully not much. Although I'd rather do that kind of double support than other options where the publisher, the big commercial publisher, who shall not be named, just takes more money than we want to give them. What was the follow-up question? It wasn't about.
The follow-up was about models, like, the role of a library or librarian is to serve patrons and researchers rather than to, I guess, have affiliations towards open access models? Question mark? Statement? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Every library needs to make that decision themselves. Jack started with reading a line from his their collection policy, which talks about what they're going to do. I pulled up ours, and in ours, we prioritize work with publishing partners that share the values stated here, including nonprofit and society publishers. You know, so we are institutional members and supporters of organizations establishing the infrastructure, standards, and work. So we have made a statement to the university saying openness is part of what we have to do because of the changing technology, the changing environment, the changing pressures, the money needs. So if the library doesn't want to do that, they don't have to. Nobody's forcing them.
Sure. Thank you, Robin. And Sarah, please do come in.
Yeah, and I really agree with what Robin's just said, and I do disagree with that premise that it's you know, it should be our job to comment on these things. We, you know, after all, we are trusted by the university with an amount of money to spend on resources that support teaching and research. There is never enough money to go around. If we don't have an opinion or develop expertise in how best to spend that money, I would strongly argue, why are we here? So if we see money is being spent on things that, quite frankly, appear to be overpriced, or they are not transparent, or any of the problems that we know exist, particularly with large commercial publishers, and we don't say anything, I think that is a dereliction of duty, to be quite frank. That's not to say that opinion will resonate with all our researchers, but there is no one voice from our researchers on any university campus. Opinions are very varied. There are lots and lots of different expressions of, we want to publish with X, Y, Z, or we don't want to publish with them, or, you know, there are strong opinions across the whole range. And, you know, we have to try and navigate that. So, you know, I would say that in standing up or in expressing some of our reservations about equity and, you know, those sorts of problems that we see, we do need to be vocal, and we do need to take the opportunity to talk to our academics and researchers openly about the problems as we see them. We have a perspective, they have perspectives, we need to discuss those.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. And colleagues, I'm now moving to row 28. Jack, I think I'm going to turn to you for this one, but I'm going to blend it with something, again, that we've had live in the Q&A around, you know, how do we ensure it's not just libraries and library budgets that come in to kind of support more equitable models of open. So what about any other funders? You know, what about the role of research funders? And indeed, do you work with them on funding for full open access?
Yeah, in the Irish context, we've got a good working relationship with Research Ireland, the largest state-backed funder in the country. Even though they don't contribute directly to our publishing agreements, we do have the same parent government department that kind of would feed funds in from both. And I think, yeah, ultimately, the money has to flow from, in some way, I think, from funders or from their source to supporting open access and open research. You know, for the last few years, we've had the not ideal situation which encouraged in the wild APC payments for open access and kind of open hybrid journals, where authors could use funds from their research grants. Research Ireland and others are tightening up on that at the moment. But there's a strong argument to redirect funds or funds like that towards negotiated agreements that deliver good kind of demonstrable value for money, and, you know, aligned with funders, with institutions, with consortium principles.
Great, thank you. Colleagues, because of time, I'm going to move on to the who area in our planning. So we're going to now delve into those questions. And for those of you listening, this is, primarily looking at this conundrum of should, when libraries support open access, should they be supporting OA publishing only for researchers affiliated with their own institution, or should it be opening up content for everybody, which some of these models we've been discussing indeed do. So, Jack, if I can stay with you about that, because you wanted to come in on this as well.
Yeah, well, I was attracted to this because it's an impossible question, really. Kind of one that's very difficult for any institution to answer. So, in the Irish context at the moment, we have a lot of transformative agreements, read and publish deals, and we are a good bit away from being able to afford open access for all of our publications in that way. As a kind of as a high income country, kind of before we even start supporting kind of thinking about the rest of the world. So there are real challenges there and kind of real lack of funding. We do, I suppose, kind of recognize that there are, I suppose, swings and roundabouts in terms of who helps who in all open access initiatives. Say if it was only a kind of read and publish deals, there would be some kind of, I suppose, kind of pollination of support between different regions on that. And it's a very artificial model in a way, the way that with these deals that the point of payment is the corresponding author's institution. So there's new models in the works from publishers, say from AIP and others, to try and spread out the costs and reduce the burden in other regions. So we're strongly supportive of those kind of initiatives, but while recognizing I suppose the limitations of what a single institution or consortium can do globally when it's got, I suppose, kind of the trying to also align that with the core mission of supporting its own immediate users.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of Sarah, if I can come to you about, quantifying some things. So, how do you quantify usage by your own institution's academics and then their use on the published side of the journals that you are considering supporting? And if I could actually extend that question a little bit to also how do you do this balance then? Jack just talked through a little bit, and there's some Q&A that's come in live as well around, there are read and publish and transformative agreements. Do you want to shift your spend over time? How is there best practice around that? Do you have experience with that? If you could speak to some of those points.
Okay, gosh, there's a lot in here, isn't there?
I know it's a packed session.
Yeah, we are trying to transition over time to more open and equitable models, absolutely. But in the meantime, we are faced with, if we had to try to fund all our own authors to publish open access, and that only model was gold open access, we wouldn't be able to afford it. So it's in our own interest to have a mix of different sorts of models, and this is where Diamond is particularly attractive, but also other fully open schemes, and importantly, publishers that are not profit driven. Let's not get away from that. So having this balance is crucial. If we're looking at particular journals and particular publishers that we want to support, yes, we look at where our authors are publishing, what's been used, but we also do consider which journals our authors are involved in editing. Are they involved in any advisory boards for scholarly societies that are really important to them? So in that way, we're trying to focus in on the subject disciplines as much as the identity of a particular publisher, and check that there is alignment going on there. But yeah, it's important for us to be thinking around how can we transition, and also recognizing which publishers are better aligned to our missions as universities than others, which publishers and which scholarly societies have values that better align to our university mission. So at York, like many other universities, our mission is to be a university of public good. And yes, okay, we have a budget which is for us to spend on our researchers and on our students. But if we can find models that enable us to open up access to the rest of the world and fulfill that public good mission, then that's a win-win, and that's what we're trying to do.
Great, thank you. And just picking out and extending some of the points you were just raising there, Sarah. Robin, if I come to you about, this question of, are there any other factors other than current affiliations of authors publishing in the journal? What other factors are persuasive? So Sarah just mentioned a few, but did you have any other thoughts or other ones?
Topic alignment is top of mind with our research and learning that happens here. Accessibility, at least in the US, we're facing an April 2027 deadline for resources at public universities to meet certain WCAG guidelines. So we want publishers to meet those so we don't have to remediate them. We're interested in data privacy, any kind of reporting. If we're supporting something that's fully open without author side fees, I want to know not only are people in my state or my nation using it, globally are they being used, because that shows, high quality and interest and reputation, and that we're not supporting something totally offline. We want to know that, archive solutions like Clocks and Portico are in train so that the material won't just totally disappear if a small publisher goes under. We want to know about their licenses they provide and the author support they provide. The library publishing rubric, which was in the chat a while ago, is another way to kind of try to figure out those things without having to visit every single publisher page. But to get back to what Sarah was talking about, it was interesting in a conversation I had with one of our faculty members a while ago. He was pushing against the library supporting Read and Publish. He was pushing against it because in his mind, he's like, one, the grant money should do that. And I don't care what you think you want to spend your grant money on. Your grant money should support paying an article processing charge. But his primary reason was the library is a common good, like Sarah was saying, a public good. And what you spend your money on should support everyone. So I can take that anti-APC argument and put it fully in support of S2O and Diamond and other options. So if I can get him to talk to everybody else on campus, I'm going to be great.
Yeah. And we probably don't have time to delve as much as I would have liked to into some of the questions about advocacy and messaging. But one thing that I would like to do, a question I would like to explore, is around researcher choice and author choice. So thanks for bringing in, Robin, their conversation with faculty member. And Sarah, I think you were down to mention this, but Jack, I do see your hand up. So look, you can both come in, but the question is, what are you doing to preserve genuine author choice rather than, say, library incentivized or institutionally incentivized journal choice in all of this? So Jack, you did have your hand up. So did you want to come in? And if it's about something else, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, like on the previous point, I was going to add that on a kind of very pragmatic side of a publisher evaluation, we're also beholden to do a kind of standard checks and balances on businesses' bona fides as a publicly funded institution. So, for example, it hasn't been an issue with us in terms of the Diamond initiatives we supported to date. checking that there's a kind of a stable business behind it. That like potentially there could be kind of a diamond away startup, which is great on open access and great on publishing, but it's kind of it's business fundamentals and the way it's managed have questions about it. So we're able to check things like that. I suppose to come on to your other question about researcher choice, I acknowledge again that that's a kind of a difficult or impossible question when we can't expect to support kind of way publishing for all avenues, for all outputs from our research community. So it's about maximizing the kind of the spread we can get from that, and also in the round, in kind of across all of this discussion, there's an element of spreading our bets between different models also, and also to try to support more innovative and more equitable models, but also to get hands-on experience in the models as they develop and grow, so we can make better calls on them.
Great, thank you, Jack. And Sarah, did you want to come in on author choice, faculty options?
Yeah.
Not having institutions impose.
Happy to. So yeah, the good news in answering this question is that because we've been working with researchers for so many years now on open access, and our research funders have been encouraging open access, our researchers have seen how beneficial open access is to the impact of their work. So they're very keen to publish open access. Now, the issue we sometimes have is that it's quite a complex mix of choices for them. How do they know whether the journal that they would like to publish with offers open access, and is it something that the library can afford to pay for them? So it is complicated. We have developed an in-house tool just recently to help us navigate through this complexity of not being in so many read and publish agreements. So we have what's called our open access route finder tool that our researchers can use to find out, if I publish in this journal, what open access options are available to me at York. So that's interactively guides them through that process. But really, we try to enable anyone to publish to make their work open access. The repository and green open access is a very important route to that. So part of this answer is about us doing much more, if you like, to big up and cheer on our repository content. We have rights retention policy in place, which means that our authors' manuscripts do get uploaded to that repository automatically. So that is there for everybody. So nobody needs to worry about their research not being open. But we also don't want to cut off them being able to publish in any journal that's fully open access. So therefore, we do have a fund that the library provides and manages for APCs in fully open access journals. So we support that route. It's particularly important for our early career researchers who may not have research grants that they can call on. So again, that's an important part of equity for us. And the other tranche of that is around our support for diamond models and for things like Open Journals Collective and other sorts of initiatives like that.
Sure. So it's such a balancing game, right?
It really is. It requires so much juggling and moving things around. So you do need to be able to do that with your budgets and not have them really tightly ring fenced in my experience anyway.
Sure. Now, we don't have oodles of time left. And then at this moment, I will say we're going to go off script for a second, speakers. So bear with me. But, I think if I'm remembering right, each of you at some point in some way has alluded to looking at for-profit versus not-for-profit, looking at commercial publishing versus, say, society publishing or not-for-profit publishing, or university press or institutional publishing. And could I just get your views on, is that an obvious straightaway commercial publishing bad, for-profit bad, not-for-profit good? And with that, so that's my first part A of the question. Part B is, what about when you have, say, a for-profit commercial entity as a publisher offering S2O or collective action or a diamond, or and even full APC publishers, not just legacy hybrid subscription model publishers, but APC publishers might also be doing institutional deals which are publish only, or indeed diamond. So if I could have your thoughts on that. Jack, your hand went up first, so I will go to you.
Yeah, this is something I was discussing with colleagues recently. In general, I would take an agnostic view on that about, kind of binary distinctions between for-profit and not-for-profit, with the good guys versus the bad guys. Recently, we have in IReL a evaluation framework for publishers to to score them by different metrics, and part of that was the for-profit, not-for-profit, and in light of, I suppose, of our kind of experience in recent years with some of the larger, nominally non-profit society publishers who, don't always behave the way you'd expect for a non-profit. Then, to behave. I suppose that's my polite way of skirting around it and being a bit vague. Me and our negotiations group decided not to rank publishers based on that, because it is such a kind of a complex and ambiguous gray area, and there's no simple binaries there.
Great, thank you. And Sarah, Robin, I don't know if you want to come in with this, and when you do, if you could also talk about where then the misalignment is, right? So if Jack is saying it's not a binary thing, and it's not about profit is bad and non-profit is good, what is the misalignment, Sarah?
Yeah, so absolutely, Jack's hit the nail on the head there. I think it's around who's making excess profits. So where, can you identify where that extractive practice is coming from? And absolutely, it's not necessarily just from a publisher that calls themselves commercial. They can be from professional organizations and some of the more commercial societies as well. I think a good indicator is how transparent these companies are, and how responsive they are to the needs of their communities and their scholars. So it is a multifaceted question, and it's not, I wouldn't want to give the impression that I was anti-business or anything like that, but I think there are ethical ways to behave in business. And, in our universities, many of our business schools actually teaching that sort of ethics led approach to business. And I just wish that more companies in the scholarly publishing sphere would take those sorts of things on board, listen to us, listen to our concerns, think about who they are dealing with, who they're working with, who they depend on for their operations, and just act more accordingly in line with that. And if they do that, we will be happy to work with them and partner with them, and take their services. But sometimes the balance of power feels that it is in the wrong place in the system.
Thank you, Sarah. And Robin, did you want to come in on this?
Yes, to everything both Jack and Sarah have said. The other piece in the room that everybody is aware of is the whole promotion and tenure process. And as much as I may want to shift my spend away from certain entities that don't align well with values or mission or accessibility or use of private data or things like that, if the faculty say, I need this to do my job, I do that. We just entered 2 years ago now, a read and publish with a society that isn't the best actor in the world, because the two departments rose up and said, we need this. And we're like, okay. So it's not, and AI isn't making this any easier. And of course, then you have just scale. Let's different organizations do different things. And that often makes things even less transparent when you have a lot of scale. When you don't have a lot of scale, it's a little easier to open the blinds, which I appreciate anybody opening the blinds.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Now, we only have a couple of minutes left. We have certainly not gotten to everything. I know that you've heard in chat that we will do our best to come back to you in written format, as well as the recording with some answers to questions we didn't get to. Thank you for all the resources and all the chat that's been going on. Thank you to our speakers for sharing so freely, giving up your time to prepare, being willing to answer these questions. And thanks to you being here today and for submitting your questions. This was a way better discussion than we could have ever planned without knowing what you most wanted to hear about, right? And we've not unpacked everything even just in that. And I'm sorry that we don't have the time to get into everything. But if I hand over to Ruby to close, you will, because you are here and because you've registered, you will have a recording and you will get our follow-up resources. Thank you so much, Ruby. Can I bring you in?
Absolutely, Malavika. Thank you so much. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Very, very quickly, I just wanted to apologise for the small technical glitch at the start of the session. You may have had a delayed entry to the webinar, but hopefully that hasn't impacted the lively discussion that we've had today. Bernie has already shared in the chat a couple of links, so please do copy those links and take them with you, including all the resources from today. Bernie has shared some OASPA links. Do continue to support the webinars, the work that OASPA does. There's information there about the conference. And please also take links and resources from today, which again will be shared with the recording on the webinar page in a couple of days. You will be notified by email when the recording and resources are available. We may need an extra day or so just to gather all these resources. There are a lot of links, there's a lot of information, but please bear with us. Everything will come out together with the recording. And thank you again for joining us. We'll give you a couple of moments to grab those, but we're mindful of time. So we'll close this down now and see you on another session. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, Malavika.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.